Hi, Bob.
Hey.
You got a scratch on your face. Hopefully all is well.
That's a fall, and that is a dermatologist thing. Skin cancer. Stay out of the sun and don't get old.
Hey, you know what? Getting old's better than the alternative, Bob.
So they tell me when you take a misstep and face plant into a wall in a hotel, bleed like a stuck pig, and raise a welt the size of a golf ball, maybe it's not so optimal.
Yeah. Hey, at least you're looking at the green grass instead of the roots below.
Yes. No doubt. The petals on the daisies are better than the roots.
All right. I'm going to leave you guys to it. Esther is the host and Bob, you're a co-host. So you should be able to do whatever you need to do. Start the record. Well, actually, I think the recording already started. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
recording.
Okay. All right, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
I guess we started in 7 minutes, so I still have a tiny bit of time.
We're early. Nobody's here yet.
Okay.
Thank you for running this. I would be terrible at it.
You're welcome. Well, I don't think you will be terrible, by the way, because you were helpful till we got our own CBAP, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, no, I'd be terrible at running the meeting. Although I used to run the other ones occasionally when the would be out. There are 2 or 3 I ran. So nobody died.
Well, let's hope today runs smoothly. This is let's see how this goes as well for me.
We're doing chapter 8 or both 7 and 8.
Oh.
I think last week we said we can do both unless if it is affecting our friends who are not present today. Do you think it is going to they're going to be affected, or I thought they're going to join anyway? They're not going to lose anything if you're going to mix both chapters, do they?
So my plan today basically was to start where you guys stopped. Thea mentioned you guys did the chapter 8. The last time that's solution evaluation. So I was looking at going to the next chapter, even though it doesn't seem like there's a next chapter. But
there isn't one. We were going to start combining chapters.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go through the questions. Let me share my screen. I'm trying to get my second monitor on just in a couple of minutes.
It is good to have multiple screens.
Yep. Apparently, I need to have the BABOK ready as well. So just in a few minutes. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on. Almost there.
Bob, I love your background and all the books that you have.
Any idiot can buy books. Some people say it's trite. But it makes me happy and it works for the space I have.
That's a good decoration. Of course, it is always great to have a book as a company.
Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. And I have no dogs, but I have leopards, red pandas, gopher tortoises, crows, and a tiger,
Yeah.
and a peacock.
Do you have a peacock as well?
Yeah, well, I have a whole bags full of animals. But I showed the peacock during the last meeting.
Okay.
His name is Peabody.
Okay.
Do we think it's going to be too much if we solve 50 questions? Or we start with 25 and we do another 25?
25.
25. We should be able to solve like 50, like the pace we've been.
Well, we can always do more, but we often have a lot of discussion.
Yeah. So that, okay. So here's what I was planning to do. To combine the 6 knowledge areas, taking out the underlying competencies. We'll focus on the knowledge areas and see what we're able to achieve today. Then if we have more time, we'll do another mix of questions and have the underlying competencies and the techniques. Does that work? Or do we have any recommendations?
I thought that you're going to mix the last two knowledge areas.
Mm-hmm. That solution and RLCM?
Yes.
Hmm.
No, the solution evaluation and the requirements analysis and design definition.
Okay. We could do that as well.
Yeah, let's stick with what everybody's expecting.
Suggested. Okay. So we'll do RADD and solution. So let me do this. Have we tried doing things on the competencies?
Generally, we don't do that because
Mm-hmm.
based on the what TL suggests, if you're selecting that, we are getting like 50% of questions based on the techniques only. And I believe she was not recommending this.
Okay. All right. We will do just the 2 then. And we have maybe at the moment I have just about 4 people here.
Yeah, more
Partic-
should show up.
Okay.
I'm
So I'll
not
just give it.
seeing them.
Yep. I will start this and maybe we'll give about 2 minutes to see if people will join in. And then we start at 5:02. That works.
And like I know Irina was in the last meeting. I wonder if they're having trouble finding us.
Mm.
Could you zoom the screen a little bit if you have the chance?
Oh, sure. Just 1 minute. I need to be sure of something. Is that okay?
Looks better, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Personally, I would like to start. What do you guys recommend?
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
I like to start, or do we just give a few more minutes for others to join us?
Usually everybody's here on time. There are 3 people from my group that won't be here because they're at the conference.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, I'd probably start.
Okay. All right. Are we ready?
We have no choice.
Ready, 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 ready. Okay, so I'm gonna restart the timer. How ready are we? How ready? 100%, 40%, 60?
99.
99.9999999.
That's it, you got it.
All right, let's go. So restart. All right. The sponsor believes that cultural assessments are of little value. What would be a compelling way to state the case for their need? A cultural assessment will determine if the existing organization is capable of accepting a solution. If cultural changes are needed, it will judge the organization's ability and willingness to adapt to those changes. Hmm. Okay, what do we think? What's our thoughts?
I think wait, A and we just finished reading. Yeah.
Do you want to go with A?
Yeah, I feel like I was between A and C,
Okay.
but I think I like A more.
Okay, Imal?
Well, actually, D sounds good to me as well. It will judge the organization ability and willingness to adapt to the cultural change required for the stakeholders. Not really for readily adapt solution. I will go with A as well.
Okay. Let's see what A tells us. Are we ready, ready, ready? I actually would also go with A, but let's see what the answer is. Let's see. Check answer. Oh, we were correct.
Yay.
Yay. Next question. But do we understand why this basically why this is the answer?
8.4.4.1.
Yep. So I have the Babok. Now,
I feel like it
basically,
kind of combines A and C are so similar, but then the part about judging the organization ability is also part of it.
mm-hmm,
So it consists of like all 3 things.
yeah.
And
And
also willingness to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm. So every organization already has its preset rules. We have legacy already there. Now, usually in those situations, when you're trying to bring in a solution, there are people that are definitely going to be stuck on to the old legacy or to the legacy to what has been more like the standard. So we need to actually assess that this organization is capable of assessing that, of accepting the solution. Like, are they going to accept it? Now, if they are even capable of accepting it, it would basically just really check how they're able and willing to adapt, because they definitely have no choice but to accept at some point, but they also need to be flexible enough to adapt to the situation or to the changes. So this A actually has a combination of C and D, and maybe just the lazy exam or the lazy student in me is just going to pick an answer that encompasses more than one thing. But maybe, just maybe. All right, let's go to the next.
Most comprehensive cost effectiveness isn't necessarily a thing that takes out B, and we could look at the other ones also, but let's stick with this.
All right.
And,
Thank you, Bob.
Coffee joins us as well. One more member.
Yep. Okay, Julian is a BA working on a project to create a new subscription management system. The team has developed the data and navigation to handle. Okay. So the application can accept new and trial subscriptions, process payments, and inactivate subscriptions. During the current iteration of the effort, Julian is sensing that the team is missing some key requirements. And we were given a state diagram to register, request new paid, pending subscription trial, payment approved, activate subscription, convert.
Can you scroll down to the answer, because it kind of helps me to see what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Theo usually reads all the text of the questions and all the answers.
Okay. So let me go to the text. It says Julian is a BA working on a project to create a new subscription management system for Nord-Est magazines. Now, the team has developed the data and the navigation to handle the various entities and states in the diagrams below. The application can accept new and trial subscriptions, process payments, and inactivate subscriptions. So during the current iteration of the effort, Julian is sensing that the team is missing some key requirements. And we were given the state diagram for the subscription entity. It says it gives us the register, it gives us the trial the register bit that has the pending subscription. So if one is registering, one is more or less like requesting new paid subscription. Now, if one also registers, another state would be to request a trial subscription. So it's just like you register, you sign up for something and they give you like a trial period. Or you decide to be a paying member of state. So those are two states for registration. So for some people, once they request a new paid subscription, the payment is approved and their subscription is activated. That's an active subscription. And for those that go through the trial subscription, they definitely would have an active subscription, but at some point they could convert and request a full subscription. So it's giving them that state. And when the subscription elapses, inactive subscription. Now we have this arrow going back and forth because some users can have inactive subscriptions, but the subscriptions can still be turned on if they process their payment. So it could become active. So we're just seeing the process in a state diagram. When when the subscription elapses, and inactive subscription, if somebody has an inactive subscription in the database for at least 3 years based on this state diagram, they are going to archive the data. So now, from the above scenario, then we have the diagrams, we have the primary key. I don't think we want to go into what the primary key and foreign key is. Let me see.
No, we don't have to go to the tables, but I want to, I don't know, I'm just gonna take my chances and go with B, because I didn't see anything mentioned on how someone can cancel it.
Okay. So for, we'll say A, the former subscription, which is implied in the diagram. Do we have anything that looks like a former subscription is implied?
Well, depending on how you consider a formal payment, like you said, right? If someone cancels their subscription, they can go back at any time, like you show, right? So I think a formal subscription is already implied, in the diagram. So it's not what we are really looking for. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way I'm looking at it.
I think I would also go with your claim, because if you look at the subscription, I'm trying to remember if this is an ERD, Bob. This would be an ERD, right? For databases.
Yeah.
Yep. I knew I was missing something in my head. Okay. Now, what I'm picking from this is the date of first use. So this gives me that there is actually it's actually been implied that some people have former subscriptions. That's actually been implied. So maybe, just maybe. Then a canceled subscription, which is a valid state for any subscription. We have inactive subscription. Inactive subscription and canceled subscription, what's the difference?
I guess inactive is something that a user did not use for a little while, and a cancel subscription will be something that the user cancel on purpose. I mean,
Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Okay. So would we say this is a valid state for any subscription? I personally would say no. Some people would never cancel, might never cancel. Some would just be inactive. That's my thought.
I can agree on that. And honestly, the more I'm looking and thinking about the questions, the more I feel like the correct answer should be C. And the reason behind it for me will be that we don't have, unless I may say it, we don't have anything that will reflect the reject subscription due to payment not being approved, unless I miss it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing canceled and rejected kind of the same way.
Michelle, can
And
you please repeat
inactive.
that?
Oh, sorry. I was saying I kind of see the canceled and rejected almost in the same way.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. And then suspended, I see it as like the inactive. They don't just suspend your account. I don't know. I might be overthinking.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Well, actually, it is a very good question. There are a lot that we can improve. But to answer correctly based on the CBAP, I mean, if you think only CBAP context, it is something else. But if you're thinking how to improve and refine the requirements, I mean, inactive subscription can be a need state. Cancel subscription can be a different, distinguished, and unique state that we should add it, because they can be two different state. But the more I'm thinking that from trial subscription, how we can go directly to an active subscription, but based on the answers, we don't have those options and the answers.
So what do we think is going to be the answer? I have an idea what the answer is. I'm just waiting.
I'm thinking about A.
Okay. Who else is on the A team?
We're all divided.
Kosi, you're muted.
Personally, I will stick with C.
Okay. Michelle.
I said B. I don't know.
Oh Lord.
What
Oh,
about Bob?
we need to pick something. Hi, Bob.
Like
Bob,
C,
you B.
it's just a feel I have.
C, right?
There's nothing in the diagram that has an activity for payment that doesn't go through. So that would be needed. There's only the happy case, and you need
That's
to have
true.
the unhappy case.
Okay. So let's go back somewhere. Before we pick something, I want us to go back up. Now let's take a look at it from a place of understanding. It says Julian is a BA, Kosi is a BA, Emal is a BA, working on a project. And what you want to do is to create a new subscription management system for this particular magazine. Now the team, your team, has developed the data as well as your navigation to handle the various entities and states in the diagrams. So you're working on a subscription management system. Let's not forget, it says to create a new subscription management system. Now the team has developed the data to handle various states. Now this new application can accept new subscriptions, can also accept trial subscriptions, can process payments. They're kind of telling us like the payments are gonna go through, just as an aside. And let's also not forget that it's a new subscription, but this magazine has been working before. They've been in existence before, so they're probably gonna have new like previous subscribers.
Okay.
Now, and inactivate subscriptions. So with that understanding, let's take a look at the answers again. It's going to take out, we have 3 answers. There are 2 very likely answers. I want to see what the answer is going to be as well. But one particular answer is not going to apply in all the answers that we picked.
I'm more eager to know the answer than like some show
Yeah,
I'm
me
binge
too.
watching.
I kind of realize it's 3 scenarios based on the same question. That's
So let's just pick a random one.
Well,
Who's
I was gonna say now I can kind of see because that's well because it's about the payment, and then I started rethinking about the whole thing, and it's a lot of it is about the payment stuff.
I lost a lot of brain power just thinking about this question.
all right. Kosi, let's just go with what you want.
Really?
Yeah, let's
Why me?
let's just pick one. Give
Okay,
you the
okay.
option.
Okay, see, let's go.
I favor C also, so I'll take the hit if we're wrong.
See?
Okay,
So
so
you wanted to do 50 questions. We can't even get through 2.
yeah, now I realize. Okay, Bob, you want us to go with C?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
C for Cozy.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Super good.
I love that. C for Kosi. Let's go.
Oh
Are we
God.
right? Are we right?
No.
Are we right? Are we right?
Yeah, let's go. Babok, please.
Wow,
Yeah!
that's all right.
Cozy, you're the man.
Reject the subscription because of the payment not being approved.
Let's say the trigger payment, the plans are not payment plus the payment.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a state that if the payments are approved, so it goes to activated, and if the payments rejected, so we don't have a state.
Yeah. So let me explain why the answer was actually C. Now, when dealing with, there's no one size fits all rule when it comes to state diagrams. But in state diagrams, you're going to have to be, like, you have to think outside the box, but also restrict yourself to the information you've been given. as much as possible. That's why I had to take us to accept new and trial subscriptions. Remember, it's a subscription management systems, which is run and dependent. What actually is the main thing for people to do in subscriptions? They have to pay. Payment is like the main thing. So if you look at the state diagram, one key thing for state diagrams is there's usually a trigger. So what exactly is the trigger? Do you notice that for this active subscription that has to do with the active subscription, you have like 3 boxes dependent on it. You have this pointing to this, you have this pointing to this, you have this pointing to this. That tells us that this is actually a very, very important state in the entire process, because pending subscription or new subscriptions, for example, they're still going to have to pay. Even if it's a trial period, there's still a supposed trial period, then maybe they don't convert to payment, but there's still the payment factor. Now, somebody's termed inactive because maybe he or she has not been making payments or something, but his subscription still becomes active with the payment. So the payment factor is actually a very, very key state in this function. So you also look and try to identify what is the trigger in every state diagram, or what is like the center. What is the I would call it like the system of authority, depending on whatever you're working on. What is the main thing or the centerpiece for whatever you're working on? So yeah, C for COSI, we were right with that. Let's move on to the next.
I'm kind of curious, please. Can you stay on the question? Can you choose B, please?
Let's see what
no,
B
not
has.
B, not B, D like dog, sorry.
Okay, suspended subscription when a payment is not approved.
It does make kind of sense, but I just want to know what.
Yep, let's check answer. Now, there's nothing in the question or in either model to suggest the state. And if we go back, it says inactivate subscriptions. The application can inactivate. And they've also told us what is the grounds for inactive.
Yeah, I was just curious to say, because when I look at it first, I'm like, what's the difference between C and D? And really,
Yep. Okay, so we move to the
you have
next.
to choose it back though, otherwise it will cash out the wrong answer.
We got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Check answer.
Yep.
And we are good, and we go to next. Okay. Oh, Jillian again. All right.
Three questions on her
same
list.
scenario.
Missions, same scenario.
Yep. So now Jillian has discovered that the SMS, the subscription management staff, they frequently change addresses. Now, not the system. Let's be clear. The staff frequently change addresses for customers who have 2 residences. Now, to facilitate address changes, they would like to allow saving an alternate address for a subscription. How should Julian handle this? We have an option to consult with an implementation SME. That's a subject matter expert, such as a database analyst, on how to handle this. To add attributes in the individual entity, to permit saving an alternate address, to add a separate address entity and tie it to individual in a one-to-many relationship, and to reject the request since there is only one address allowed per subscription.
This time B for Bob.
Oh, Lord. Well, Imal, if we're going to be using names, I know your first name or your name, Imal, doesn't have an option, but we're going to be sticking with your Durrani.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll
Yep.
go C for Churchill. I
Okay.
hope
Ah.
that's the right answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of like C too.
C. So
C
add a
for
separate.
cool, baby.
Okay.
For me, I will go with B, and the only reason is not something from the BABOK, but I feel like maintaining one to many relationship in a database, if we're talking about thousands of customers, might at some point create some redundancy. I mean, it's just me thinking a little bit too far at this point, but I will go with B personally.
Can you show the entity with the with the individual address, so we can add more attributes. So we have already an entity as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And my reasoning, as Kasi said, is we can add an additional attribute within the same entity.
Yeah, it would, what you would do, what he's talking about, or what B is talking about, is putting address fields in that same records, all saying they're the second one. In general, that's a bad idea. You want to keep entities that you repeat as their own thing as much as possible and link to them. So that way, what if somebody, for some bizarre reason, has 3 addresses? Well, then, or what if they have 10? You know, what if somebody orders pays for a subscription for 10 people? Then that situation, building it all into the main entity, becomes increasingly brittle and waste space. And having a separate address for each one is more modular and flexible and saves space.
Exactly. That's great. So, yeah, as Bob said, also I'm changing my answer because for optimization purposes, that will be really a very slow and bad system.
Okay.
Makes sense. Thank you, Bob.
So what answer are we going with?
I'm changing it to the C to make a separate entity.
Okay. Let me say something to that. If we're going to create a separate another entity, and we have the address entity, what is going to be, let's look at the ERD here. What is going to be the primary key in the address entity?
Additional addresses,
No.
secondary addresses.
Nope.
If I mean, I feel like the address should be tied to the name, regardless if it is a primary or alternate address, because the name most likely will be what will differentiate people. Like if you think apartment, like literally people live on the same street, like Capano D3, Capano D4, and to avoid some issues, I guess if the address is tied to the name, most likely they will not have the same name. I mean, it's just me thinking it can be wrong, but yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Okay,
can
now
think of a couple
I
ways to address that problem.
mhm.
One is that the addresses can have the individual ID, so
ID, exactly.
they're linking the other way, or you use multiple keys to link to the addresses.
Exactly.
But I think the building the individual key into the address is the way to go.
Yep. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. Oh, not the tip of the iceberg, like a secret for those of us that deal with databases. Most times we do not rely on names to
Oh,
determine
yeah.
our primary keys and foreign keys because there are multiple people bearing my exact first name, middle name, and last name.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's true, yeah. Yeah.
So database engineers never deal with names. What they would do is have a unique
Some
identifier,
ID.
which is
Mhm.
always an ID.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any exam, it's like a basic thing for any exam. Like, oh, what would be maybe the foreign key or the primary key? What comes to everybody's mind is, oh, there has to be an ID. Nobody would ever think of a name. So
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
we're looking at C, right?
Mhm.
to add a separate address entity and tie it to an individual in a one-to-many relationship. That's what everybody's going with.
No, I said B. I said B
People
from
say
the
stick to
beginning.
something.
I think he's always been B. The
Yeah,
rest
Okay.
of
I
us are
was being
saying
B. Yeah.
C.
Okay, Bob.
I'm going C.
Okay. Who else? Michelle, just say something. Try.
I say C. I say C. I'm sticking to it.
Okay, we have the C's and the C's and the C's. Yep, that's actually correct.
Yay.
Really?
Yep, because that's why I needed to ask us to visually create that entity, that address entity, and know what is going to be like the primary key and the foreign key. So automatically, if we're going to have that address entity, it's going to be linked to an individual. Do you understand? And in that address entity, we're allowing possible multiple addresses, but it's linked to one person. So that individual ID can have an affiliation in another separate database or cluster of multiple addresses, but we know it is tied to one ID.
Oh, okay. I get it now. Yeah. Are you a
Cassie,
DBA by any chance?
and Cassie, do you know what Bob said? Let's say we have millions of entries,
Yeah.
millions of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So if we add one more row for the individuals, maybe not millions of entries, they all have, secondary or maybe the third addresses.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Unnecessarily, we make additional rows for the entire database.
Okay.
That's what Bob tried to say, and I loved it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you make an separate entity, so we are optimizing the system. That's also what I loved it.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
we're actually optimizing the system. But remember, okay, sorry, I'm also bringing in a bit of database basics or database understanding here. When we start setting up a database, we have some database rules. Rules where you are not allowed a null entry if we create an entity and we say, oh, this particular line or row should not have anything null. It must not be empty. Or if we're allowing it to be empty, or like we're saying it doesn't have to be empty, there's something maybe automatically populated. It might just be NA, not applicable, such that when you spool out the data, you're not having any empty line or empty row and empty space. But the goal is something is there and it is real, but we're creating that space because if we have people in an organization that are always moving, today they're in apartment A, next month, then apartment D. How exactly are you going to track them? So you need to have record of all these things and
Yeah.
just keep it for something. All those things actually come up useful or get in handy. And data is like money. It's money these days. It's very important for every organization. So they basically need that. And they're actually optimizing and keeping their data high.
Yeah.
So if you actually work with the stuff like this, even if you're not formally trained in databases, you'll get a pretty good feel for how you need to do stuff. And like,
Exactly.
I think Esther probably knows way more about databases per se than me, since I've concentrated on so many other things. But you can see your way to the problem and making small package entities wherever possible and making things as modular as possible is always the way to go.
Yep.
And you eventually, as you do this, you build up a kind of memory of ways you did things more efficiently or found out some wasted space, and you have all those recollections to lean on.
Yep. And thank you, Bob, for that. That was super helpful. Now, another thing is, let's look at the question. It says that Julian discovered, that's the BA, that the subscription management staff, not the system now. The staffs are the ones that frequently change the address for the customers that have two residences. So it's like a lot of work for even the employees themselves. So they're like the staff. So to facilitate address changes, they would like to allow saving an alternate address for a subscription. So it's like you're now having a subscription management system that's based on the previous question, a system that we're ensuring it can accommodate multiple addresses because someone is calling the staff today, oh, I want to have my address changed. And the person calls tomorrow, oh, I want to have my address changed, maybe because of my billing, what's it called? Billing address, blah, blah, blah. We don't know the scenarios. But as a BA, it's always advisable. You have the facts in front of you, you stick to the facts, but also try to think beyond the facts and expand the facts a bit, but still bring it back home to see how it relates. So,
Oh, also, like your Amazon account may have multiple addresses, and it's way easier to imagine, hey, choose a different address rather than typing everything in and
exactly,
having to type everything in again. If you
exactly.
can just
Oh,
hit
yeah.
one button and off you go, that makes
Yeah.
things way easier.
Or you want to gift somebody a subscription, just like you want to get an Amazon gift for somebody. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
are we seeing how broad it is? It's just a scenario, but it's bringing up multiple things that we encounter in our day-to-day lives as BAs, more or less. Any questions, or we can proceed? Let me mark it out.
I'm curious about
That
the
said,
third scenario.
talking to DBAs or specialists isn't a bad idea. It's not necessarily the right answer. You should know this even as a BA, but yeah, always learn as much as you can from everyone. That's what the iteration is for.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Let's go to the next. Oh, that's another scenario.
This
So
is a
alien.
case-based question, so you'll have a few. You'll probably have one or two questions like this on the exam.
Yep.
Not a lot, but some.
Some, yeah. I remember my CBAP, I think the questions I had more were the calculation questions
What?
where I had to solve. Yeah, it was weird. Very weird. All right.
Wait, what?
No, it differs for people. I don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happened.
I know, right?
Maybe it was just the one I was given. It wasn't a funny experience. I
I
was exhausted.
I didn't know we should
Oh.
supposed to do some
Oh,
calculation.
there are
Do that.
calculations. And in quote, it's like they're simple calculations until you see how they are applied and blah, blah, blah. Then you need to have some of the formulas in your head.
So are we bringing any calculators in? I
Uh-uh,
mean,
nah,
No.
you're not.
what?
Nah, you're not. You're not
But
even allowed to turn your head. Like I
I
had
know.
2 strikes during the exam, and that's because I just turned my head to each. It wasn't funny.
Yeah.
but I believe they provide the digital calculator,
Yep.
so
But
you
what can
can
that do?
you can
On
do
screen.
yeah on the
Yeah, the
screen.
on screen. That's just
Uh,
plus minus divide
So
and
that's not a scientific calculator, or we will not need it.
Currently is a reverse
Better to not, because
multiplication.
we will not need it.
yeah, actually.
Yeah, better to
Um,
not.
okay. So what major functionality would you say is missing from the requirements as they are modeled? The ability to capture email marketing permission from subscribers, validating credit card payments for subscriptions, suspending a subscription, and renewing an active subscription. Do you have to renew an active subscription, okay? Suspend the subscription from the requirements as they are modeled. What is missing?
I'm kind of hesitant between A and C. And I know in the previous question, we defined that suspension, it was not a state anyway in the process. So for me, it's hard to decide actually.
It says what major functionality is missing.
Yeah, suspending a subscription is a functionality, even though it might not be a state, but it can be a functionality. So at the same time, the ability to capture email marketing permission from subscribers is also a functionality. I mean, in my word, I guess.
I don't know if I care about that one that much because this whole thing is based on payments, not the marketing portion.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
there is a marketing flag in the ERD.
Can you
Oh.
scroll down, please?
Marketing permission.
E-marketing
Oh.
permission. So how are you supposed to know that?
We were supposed to
It's
read
subtle.
everything.
How fast you can read, Bob?
I just happened to see that.
What was the last? Oh, renewing was the last one.
Renewing an active subscription.
I mean,
Don't we have that, like from
Yeah.
active to inactive, from inactive back to the active?
yeah.
Renewal things in there also. They're not in the state diagram, but they are in the data diagram.
Bob, if I want to query your submission, I have one thing with the exact same thing you picked out. You said possibly the e-marketing permission. Well, I also would take a look at the payment entity and see something that says payment accepted, payment type. I'm even giving you 2 keys. Okay.
So are you trying to say that the correct answer is C?
I didn't say anything, but I have an idea what it is.
I like B. I don't know if that's because if it's not a valid card, then what? But if it's A, I'll be shocked. My question for you is: should we be looking at both of these things, or like in this question, is it mostly on the state diagram?
So you're going to look at, because they said as they are modeled. So you have an ERD. It's a diagram. It's showing you your database entities and attributes in it. You also have your state diagram. So they are just descriptions explaining all the story that we're working on, or the scenario.
Okay.
So it gives you a description. It's modeling. So, Imal, do we go with D for your name? Or we go with C for Kosi? Or we could go with A for Kosi's last name? Or we have B for
You
Bob.
know what? I have a question, man. That will hold it for now. I will hold it for now. I have something in my mind, but
No idea, to be honest.
listen, I like to live dangerously, so
On the CBAP.
I believe renewing an active subscription.
Can you scroll to the top of that diagram? Like to where it starts? Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Let's just pick anyone.
I like B for Bob, but I could be
Let's
wrong.
go with B for Bob.
yeah, I will second that. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
No?
it was incorrect.
D?
Oh, it was D.
So, renewing an active subscription. Did you notice something
Oh, I see.
in the model?
Renewal number. Do you have it in the ERD diagram?
Which one to renew?
So the answer is saying the renewal number attribute hence at this.
This?
Mm.
Yeah.
Renewal number hints at this. I personally would not even go with the renewal number. I personally would go with this.
That's
Because,
ended arrow.
yes,
Okay.
because this is a separate state and it shows us that it ends.
Mm.
So what's the end to the active subscription? Something could happen.
There's also the possibility that the renewal can happen before the subscription goes inactive.
Exactly.
So that's not really shown in here.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
true.
Yep.
And now my question. So if we have those scenario-based question, right? Should we think about the question individually or should we consider the whole thing? And for me, like the reason why I was more considering A and C more, even though both are wrong actually, is because of whatever we discover in our previous question. But it seems to me like the question are totally separated from each other. Like I have to consider the question I have in front of me, not referring to whatever I have. And now that I'm thinking about it, during the test, you won't have any right or wrong right away, right?
Right.
So you have to consider each question as a whole individually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So you have to consider the question as a whole firstly. The truth is the CBAP is timed. But when you get access to a scenario question, the goal for me what I try to always or tell people, try to understand the question from the very beginning. Because we solved question 1 from this same scenario, we solved question 2, and now we're going into question 3. It's a flow. For my CBAP exam, if I remember correctly, say I had this scenario and question 1. This scenario, the next question would be another question entirely. So the scenario 2 might come up maybe in question 10 or maybe number 15. Like it might not follow because the questions are also randomized. So if you have an
Gosh.
earlier
Wow.
understanding of the question when you approach it the first time, it helps you. But also try to understand the question in its whole, because they're giving you the question, they're giving you the state diagram, everything tells a story, everything is aligned.
When you get case-based questions, they will all be asked in a row. So they might do up to 5. And it gives you a complicated scenario. And the purpose of doing in all the individual questions that are asked may or may not be related. But it's a way of grouping them all together allows you to explore a complicated scenario while only having to put the whole scenario in your mind one time. So it's kind of a shortcut that people are going easy on you, the test designers. So they're on the one hand blowing your mind with a lot of detail, but then they're asking you to wallow around in that story one time, and when you get out of it on the other side, then you're done. All right,
Okay.
they won't ask question 2, question 37, and question 115. So they'll do it all at once. And if you can use information given to you in one question, and you won't have the answers, you won't know what's right. But if you get information in one question that gives you insight into another, take advantage of that. That kind of thing does happen.
Okay.
Yep. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Let's go to the next.
We're
By the way,
not going very fast, but
Yep.
great conversation.
Good discussion, yeah. Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. And I was wanting us to do 50 questions. I was joking.
we did only 4 in 1 hour.
We're going stupidly slow tonight, and it's not you.
Okay. So Caitlin is a BA who has recommended that she perform an enterprise cultural assessment to understand why the stakeholders aren't using a new solution to the extent forecasted. Now, which of the following is the best way to define enterprise culture? It says they are the deeply rooted beliefs, values, actions, thought, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. They are the deeply rooted beliefs, values, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. They are the deeply rooted beliefs, values, actions, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. They are the deeply rooted beliefs, values, thoughts, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. Which is which?
You know what? I have that question on my ECBA exam. I can't remember the answer.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
I only remember that we don't have actions in
Yeah.
from
So
the previous weeks.
Mm.
So
yeah.
we can maybe omit those options.
Yeah.
if we do not have actions, then we already have just one answer.
Which
Because
one?
action
True.
appears, okay, we have
If
two
we are
answers because actions appears in A and in C. So
Yeah.
if actions is out of it, so we have just B and D.
okay.
So and
Yeah, I think it's B. Belief,
Yeah, because I
values,
don't know
and
if thoughts
norms
was
of
in there either.
Yeah, I don't think
yeah,
thoughts is in there.
I can agree with that.
So there
Okay.
are only 3 or 4. Those 4s or those 3s.
So do we go with B?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
B.
Hey. Go Glasgow.
But I will keep that in
We
mind that
got
we
it.
don't have action and thought.
Okay.
We do not have actions. We don't have thoughts.
Only
Yeah.
3.
Yep, only 3. Beliefs, values, and norms. This model represents a sequence of actions, events, or a course that may be taken. Which requirements model category is represented by the above statement? An activity flow, an entity relationship, a rationale, people, and roles. A sequence of actions, events, or a course that may be taken.
Not people and rules, not rational, not entity relationships.
A sequence of action. Sequence. Maybe flow?
Yeah. Yeah, with activity
Like a-
flow too.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's actually the answer. Yep.
Okay.
Entity relationship, nope. It doesn't. Entity relationship, that's what we saw, the database. It doesn't tell us, oh, this is the sequence. No. The rationale is why. It's not a flow. The
Mm-hmm.
people and roles, nope. Nope, nope, nope.
The fun, you miss all of the fun.
Yep. So we go to next. Early identification and involvement of people, groups, or organizations that may impact or be impacted by a project is critical for the project success. BAs may choose to perform this task themselves and then separately package and communicate the requirements to the impacted or impacting people for review. Which task is this? The early identification and involvement of people, groups, or organizations
Stakeholders.
that may impact or be impacted.
Okay, so one thing for sure, besides B, the three of them are actually task
Hmm.
for sure. So
Thinking cap, thinking cap, thinking cap, thinking cap.
I like A because I
Okay.
seeing the architecture. I don't know, it's like everything that goes into that.
Yeah, we're gonna
But I
if
could be
we're doing
wrong.
A for Kosi's last name, who wants to pick B for Bob's name? Oh, Bob is going for his name. Who's saying C? Kosi, do you want to use your name or do we use Bob's last name? They're not confident of C. All right. D, do we have a D? Oh, Imal.
I go with D.
Okay.
Because it says that the BA can do it by herself or himself, and then later on can communicate it with the stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stakeholder engagement is really crucial, but during which task we can do it by ourselves, and then later on can communicate the result with the stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what answer are we going with?
I go with D,
Steven,
and
you be
I
the
would like to hear
tiebreaker.
from Bob.
I don't
Okay,
know.
so
I was thinking A or B.
okay,
They
you
didn't
know
B.
what?
specify a modeling requirement.
I'm actually having more B's, so do we go with B?
all task?
I'm
It's-
having more B's actually. That's why.
and any reason why we kind of ignore C by any chance?
I'm going with the flow.
Yeah. No, I just asked because I'm thinking from all of them sound nice, but at the
They
same time,
sound nice. Oh,
well, I
wow.
mean, no. What I mean is like really, if you kind of maybe I'm overthinking it, but you can literally, you can literally define a requirement and then have a workshop or you name it with the stakeholder to do that. Same thing for define design option. And same thing for specifying model requirement. But in the Babok word, maybe one or all of those things are correct. So I really don't know. Someone, I don't know. I really don't know.
Actually,
Kosi, overthinking is part of the job.
Yep.
I was expecting the Bob should say that we cannot do the requirement, the specification, and modeling without the stakeholders.
Oh yeah?
I don't know why I was expecting this, that Bob should say.
What is requirement architecture?
I think that's the correct answer.
No. I'm just asking. I'm actually
Well,
asking to get a background about something. Oh yeah, sorry.
yeah, I think it's
The word requirements is in the question and also in two of the potential options for answer.
Okay. So let's do so what are we going with?
I have changed my answer from D to A.
wow.
I'm sticking
Let's
with
test A
B.
then.
I'm not the student. I already passed this thing.
Did we already state what defined requirements architecture is?
No, it just sounds good.
Have we ever seen defined requirement architecture in the Babok before?
Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah, I'm about to
task.
look it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually task 7 7.4 in the requirement analysis and design definition.
Yep. So what it is? What is it?
Well, two people say A, so let us try A. So
No, she's asking what is
What is the
defined
requirements
requirements
architecture?
oh, sorry.
Oh,
So
like what is it used for?
so the task is ensure that the requirement collectively support one another to fully achieve the objective.
Yeah.
My
Do we know
question,
that
do you need the stakeholders to do this task?
now requirements architecture is very, very important because the requirements are actually organized into, I would say, into different ways that is relevant to the different stakeholders. So you need
Which
your
number?
stakeholders. Now, if you go to 7.4.2,
Okay, 1 second.
the description, let me move. Can you see the Babok on my screen?
Oh,
Mhm.
you're projecting it. Let's see. Yeah.
Now, it says organize requirements into structures relevant to what? The different stakeholders. So the requirements is just a structure of all the requirements.
And can you read the purpose? The purpose of the defined requirement architecture is, I mean, can we do this task without the involvement of the stakeholders? If the answer is yes, then that can answer our question.
You can do it without the involvement because you are the BA, you're defining the requirements, but you still need the interaction because how do you define requirements in the first? How do you get the requirements? Also from initial interactions, right?
No, it is not the requirement elicitation, it is the requirement just to define the architecture.
Yep, so I'm bringing up something now. The requirements that are being structured and brought into the requirement architecture, you already have the requirements. Then the requirements are what is used to create a requirement architecture. So you have you've elicited your requirements already from the very beginning. It's just now how you're organizing the requirements, you're structuring the requirements based on the requirement, you get your models, you organize the requirements into a structure that fits for different stakeholders. So you have elicited your requirements already. And how did you elicit the requirements? It came from the people that are, now let's use the exact words in the question. Came from the people that may impact or be impacted. Those are your stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now, what's the answer to this? Based off this, I've cleared the fact that defining requirement architecture is good, is a part of this. So what are we picking? I don't want to go to the design options and specify, but let's understand it together. Let's pick something that works. Don't be scared.
I don't
It-
like the design option one. I just feel like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I still
Okay.
stick with it, but you're making me rethink, Esther.
Oh, thank you.
I'll stick
That's
with it.
your
I don't know.
job.
I already do it
As
to
you
myself.
Guys, pick up something.
I say A.
Okay.
Okay, let's check A.
do A as well.
Yeah,
Hmm.
let's go.
And
A was not because of me, by the way.
A
It's
was
not.
because of the Bob.
Yep, it was because of Bob, not because of me.
Bob
Yep.
No,
silently
I'm
said that.
sticking with B, but Bob is not always right. Esther makes a compelling case.
I mean, I picked A because of just the way that it's
That
structured there,
that's
but
why I'm saying, like, okay, so let's check the answer. A, right? Are we ready?
Yes.
yeah.
And finally, we got it.
I'm so stressed out
Oh,
right
no
now.
way.
Jesus Christ, what now?
How
This one
comes
didn't think that.
business analysts may choose to perform this task themselves and separately package and communicate the requirements
Mm-hmm.
to a stakeholder for their review and approval? Or they might choose to invite some or all stakeholders to. Actually, I don't like this question and this answer, to be honest.
I don't either. The funny thing is, what I was thinking was going to be the answer was actually this, the B.
Mm.
Now, how you can define design options without the involvement and the engagement of the stakeholders, even to specify and model requirements. I mean, personally, in practical life, for me, always I do it with the stakeholders.
Exactly.
But I don't know. It is it is it is it is the exam.
Yeah, and
The
remember,
other thing is, everything you do, you iteratively run it by the all the stakeholders and involved parties. So that's why I was going with the all tasks.
that's the reason
And
I was
if there,
actually going with all tasks too, Bob.
You know
yeah.
what? This thing is like,
Also,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, sorry, Bob, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of requirements of architecture, I put an image in the chat, and I always talk about the phases and doing traceability through the phases, so you make sure everything gets done
Mm-hmm.
and nothing gets left out, and those are the horizontal lines. But the vertical part, that tree structure, that's the requirements architecture. It's how all the elements line up to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
in reality, those two representations have to match up. In fact, in
Exactly.
this presentation, I actually talk about depicting the embedded tree structure kind of on top of the other structures, so they
Mm-hmm.
align. But this is just a way I think about it. It's like two views of a thing that may look a little bit different, but they're
Different.
the same thing. And each view gives you different information and has
Exactly.
different uses. I'm
Yeah.
actually rather proud of that image.
Yeah, it's actually a great image, by the way. So I was actually also for B because all the tasks, but I think what they're actually what I'm understanding from this definition is they are looking at the tasks that BAs can do alone without the involvement of stakeholders. So requirement architecture, well, you need your stakeholders to define your design options. You need your stakeholders because an input to design options your requirements architecture is an input to your design options to define it. Now, if you're defining, definitely your stakeholders will come in. Now, to specify a model requirements, it feels like, oh, because the BA is the one maybe mapping the diagrams. But before I map the diagrams, I'm getting my inputs from my stakeholders. That's where I have a problem with this. But they are saying that the BA could do it independently, but I don't 100% agree with this because if I model a diagram independently, there's going to be a lot of problems.
Yeah.
As a BA, I need to validate it.
Exactly.
So,
I do agree with you. I mean, specifying and modeling, generally we do it for the pure sake of refining requirements, so I can define it with the involvement of stakeholders. I don't know. I didn't like this answer and this question.
I don't. And let's also go back to the BABOK. If you take a look at this, yeah, also coming from an IT environment, yeah, because it says in many, and this even the BABOK even says this is important. In many IT environments, the word design is used specifically for technical designs created by software developers, data architects, and other implementation subject matter experts. It's a collaboration. It's not something you do in isolation. And they're telling us it is important.
But perhaps actually, if you go a little bit more down to the stakeholder section, they also mentioned that BA can do it
Yeah.
by themselves.
Okay, let's go there.
So after the techniques. So, but I couldn't understand the logic behind this. What is the rationale? Any stakeholder, okay, of course, and also they mentioned it very clearly here that
Yeah, that's true. May choose to perform it themselves, or they
yes,
might choose to invite.
but
Why?
there is no way I will be able to remember this line from the book.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And let's be real, what is an input to this process?
Yeah, and what
I'm
is
I'm
the
I'm not
guide?
I'm not doing it in isolation. I'm working with my elicitation results. That's the problem I have.
And
So yeah,
and
go
even
ahead.
even the guidelines and tools that we are using. So we are using the requirement architecture. We are using the requirement lifecycle
Cycle
management
management tools.
solutions. I don't know. That's a good question. I should go again to the same question to understand why that answer is correct.
Yeah, I think these are recommendations we could make to Babok version 4.
Remember that these questions by Watermark are more, I mean, they're meant to put you through every paragraph of the Babok, and they're not always totally representative of what you'll see on the
On the
test.
exam. Yeah,
As
that's
I've
true.
said a million times, sometimes these questions are a little goofy and a little unfair, and the
I
test is
agree.
hard enough, and the questions are usually more fair and easier on the exam.
Exactly. That's the truth.
So
Some of all
don't
these test providers make it more
doubt
technical than it should
anyone.
actually be.
So
Okay.
I think the key word is it then, because in both instances, they're saying they have to involve the stakeholder.
Yep.
But in the beginning, you might do it by yourself, and then you're gonna
Have to. Yeah.
package it and communicate it with the stakeholder.
All right.
That is a good point. That makes a lot of sense. We
Oh,
can
yeah, it does.
specify and maybe model it, and then later on share to refine or maybe elicitate more requirements.
All right.
that's why iterate. Find
Okay.
out what's going on, get the information, document it, and have the customer review it, the stakeholder modify it, and keep doing that until everyone is in agreement.
All right.
As a last word, perhaps this question is trying to tell us when we are modeling, let's say we are making a state diagram, we don't need the stakeholders, or we are making the data dictionaries or maybe the ERD diagrams. We can
Yeah,
do
we
it
don't
ourselves and then we can share it just for the purpose of, maybe
review,
refining the requirement.
feedback.
So actually, the more we are thinking about it, the more it makes sense.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's go to question 8. If anybody fails this, there's gonna be a bit of trouble. After a long and challenging project, Roger has to determine if an enterprise is able to adapt to or effectively use the solution. What does Roger need to do in order to accomplish his goals?
B,
Really?
Yeah, cultural.
Really?
enterprise is able to adapt to or effectively use the solution.
First question, is even impact analysis something in the Babok?
So are we speaking with B?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking a question because I'm trying to remember. Perform impact analysis. Like, is that even a thing in the Babok? I'm trying. It might be something in the real life, but
in the real life.
I mean, because the Babok is the Babok is the Babok.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to have some reference here because
Mm-hmm.
it seems like
Oh,
the
wait, sorry.
obvious, yeah. No, I said it seems like the obvious thing to do, but I wanted to make sure that it's even mentioned in the Babok at first.
Okay.
Hold on,
Well,
let's see.
let's do a Control F, but impact analysis is something important, by the way. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I think I find it is the
Not
term.
only impact analysis, I believe even we have the stakeholder
The
impact.
stakeholder impact, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what option are we going with?
I always stick with D.
D. Wow. Who said D, by the way? Kosi.
I
Okay.
Mhm.
Another option?
B.
B. Another option?
People said B, so let's go with B.
All right.
What?
What does
What?
That makes no sense.
Yeah, I would have. That's why I said B too. Cultural assessment, able to adapt is what I would think. Well,
Let's go to 8.4 because I am done.
Okay, before going there, actually, that option A makes sense because the question is saying it is not about whether the enterprise or the stakeholders are they are accepting the changes or they are ready to accept. The question is not about the readiness of the stakeholders. It is not about the culture. It is about adapt to use the solution effectively. So it is all about the operation.
mm,
They're
By
right,
the
actually.
way, those options are the three section or the four sections in a 4 form. So they're
Yep.
all legit. The
Yeah.
third one is worded differently. So the question is probably correct.
So the operational assessment is performed to determine if an enterprise is able to adapt to or effectively use a solution.
Highlighting that.
And that's different from the first one. Why?
Yeah, I think there's some understand.
Okay, this
'Cause the
is
other one-
enterprise culture is basically if the culture can accept a solution.
Yeah, perhaps
That's
that is
pretty
earlier than the
touchy.
operation. For example, we are talking about the change. We are talking about the change, then perhaps cultural assessment can play a crucial role. But we have already the solution.
Yep, they said after a long and challenging project.
Yeah. So already we have gone through the cultural assessment.
that's true.
So the operational assessments, if they are able to use, so they might be correct. Let's move on to the next.
Oh, no, they are.
What are the guidelines and tools that are used for the recommend actions to increase solution value task?
Kasi is good at these kind of
Yeah, that's what I was waiting.
Put him on the spot.
Yes.
Can we go and take the exam all together? It will be a collaborative session. Then we can all take the certification.
Oh.
We definitely need business objectives.
Yeah, for the
So
recommendation.
it's A or
And
D.
we definitely, I believe, need the scope, the scope too.
And the current state description as well. Based on the current state, we can recommend something.
So we go with A.
Yeah, that would be
We
A.
agree on
Agreed.
something.
Finally.
So we go with A, Esther.
A for Cassie.
Yay.
Oh yeah.
Go, Kosi, go, Kosi, go.
Yeah, that was not me.
Okay, so the guidelines and tools to recommend actions to increase the solution value task is business objectives, okay, the current state description, and the solution scope. Alrighty, number 10. In order to obtain the ISOs, that's the ISO certification, an organization created a problem management team. The team doesn't appear to be fitting in. Now, which of the following would be helpful regarding the assessment of these solutions? They want to obtain the ISO certification and they created a problem management team. Now, this team feels like they're not fitting in. They're unable to fit in, like match up with the organization. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of hiccups. People are like, these people, what exactly are they doing here? Let's not forget it's a problem management team. So there are people that are going to kick against it. Like, what problem exactly are they identifying? So, which of the following will be helpful regarding the assessment of this solution? An enterprise culture assessment, stakeholder impact analysis, organizational structure changes, operational assessment, or the organizational structure changes, stakeholder impact assessment, or the organizational structure changes, stakeholder impact analysis, and operational assessment. Enterprise culture assessment, organizational culture changes, and operational assessment.
I will say D.
And I will say A.
We have D and A, another option. Stephen.
Yeah, I'm trying to compare A and D.
Oh Lord, A and D as well.
Culture
I think,
assessment.
Michelle.
Oh, hold on.
So I know
Kim.
I mentioned something about the stakeholder impact analysis, but I
Mhm.
can't remember what we said about it. I know I asked if that was in the Bible. You guys say yes, but I don't know if you mentioned something else.
Yeah, it was in the BABOK.
Yeah,
And
but
we looked at the operational assessment, the cultural assessment, and it was a flow. So it was part of, the stakeholder impact is you're basically doing an analysis to check how a particular solution impacts the stakeholder, how they're affected by it.
okay, that's impact analysis, stakeholder impact analysis.
And the ISO certification will impact certain stakeholders.
So yeah, it
And
might be.
that's the only one missing from D. So A and D.
ISO is actually like the International Standards Organization.
And
So
we
maybe
are
that would,
committing, yeah, we are committing to different standards.
yeah, so maybe that would give a bit of context.
But the 4 options there are from section 844, like we just discussed, and they're for them 2 different options with 3 of them and 1 option with 2 of them. So we're trying to figure out which combination actually makes sense. So we know the section, we know all those are valid concepts, and we're just trying to ice that whole sway. And you would never get a question that is this twisty on the actual exam.
That's the truth. So, but I personally, I'm actually going with A or D because of one particular thing, the enterprise culture assessment. That's the reason
Is
I'm
like
going
all
with.
option? Does A say like all options?
Yeah.
Yep, all
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, A has all 4 of them.
During the exam, shall we go with the broadest option, which cover all the options?
That's
Consider
A.
the
Not
team is not fitting
necessarily.
in.
I don't know where the organizational structure changes come in. Let's also remember that it says in order to obtain the certification, the organization created a problem management team. Now the team doesn't appear.
The organizational structure changes something
So
which happen a lot, in fact, in the organization, especially when you're committing to new standards or new responsibilities. You should create new teams, maybe totally new unit.
now they said they created the team, but the team doesn't appear to be fitting in. So what do they need to do to let the team fit in?
They should change the organizational structure, I don't know.
So let's say enterprise culture assessment goes and organizational structure. Now, operational assessment. Operations has to do with whether the organization is going to be able to use, right? Is that what operational assessment goes for? We saw the difference between the culture and the operational. Operation means after there's a solution.
So the question is why the team doesn't appear to be fitting. We don't know. It might be during it might be because of the cultural issues. It might be because of it can be anything.
Yeah, I
Basically,
personally want to
go and assess all those areas.
I personally want to go with D.
Yeah,
Let's go and check it.
I will stick with D too.
Just watching the stakeholder impact.
And if we fail it, we're failing together. The reason I want to go with D is because there's no, they said in order to obtain, they haven't obtained it. And I don't see any impact that is going to affect impact to the stakeholders in an organization getting an ISO certification. So I don't see that. So let's check the answer and let's see if that's correct.
No way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What?
Because
These are all the elements.
The
Assessing the
stakeholder impact
solution.
analysis is if the if the stakeholder is in a different location, or how the stakeholder uses the solution, that might affect how they perceive the solution.
So on another word, what they were asking us is all of the element of the
Assess enterprise limitation.
Actually, I love this question as well as the previous question. As you pointed out at the last, you said that they haven't
obtained it.
So it's still there is no solution. I mean, if there's already a solution, then maybe the cultural assessment is pointless because we have gone through that. Like previous question, we didn't need it, isn't it? But
so let's look at it.
We need it perhaps.
Yeah, so let's look at it.
Technically, we're at time now. And I need to get going.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, we have just 1 more minute, but let me just wrap up with this. Oh, Bob, say your final.
I was gonna say, we should look at the results, the overall results, and then you can come back to talking about this question.
Okay, how do we check the overall results? Submit exam?
Yeah.
That's gonna be 10, not even 10. Oh, Lord.
Maybe you have a lot of questions.
That's weird. Yeah, we had a lot.
Because we had chosen to complete 25. So even those that we didn't attempt has been counted as incorrect, perhaps.
Yeah, that's correct. So we should
I got a lot out of tonight, though. Like it made me think a lot. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Esther.
Hopefully that is for good for the
Yeah, I hope
for the
so too.
exam.
No, it's
Sometimes
for good, actually.
overthinking might not be good, but also I loved tonight's session. I learned a lot. Thank you.
We
Thank you,
love
guys.
Thea, but we also want way more Esther.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Esther.
I'll be here next week again, so let's see how we do next week. But thank you so much, guys. This was
Yeah.
amazing, by the way.
So
Thank
we're
you.
gonna study 7 and 8 for next week still?
Yep.
7 and 8?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm also gonna ask Thea if she has any thoughts on maybe what we should add, and I'll circle back.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Good
Thank you
night.
guys. Have a good
Good
night.
time. Thank
Good
you.
night,
Bye.
everyone.